All right.
Right. Always.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did I get a response back? Good afternoon, everyone. All right. Yeah, who's enjoying their NeurIPS experience so far this week? Yeah. Oh, come on, you guys can do better than that. Who's enjoying NeurIPS 2018 here in Montreal? That is more like it. Well, on this final workshop day, hello, I'm Kenny Chen. I'm from Ascender over in Pittsburgh, and I'm proud to be one of the organizing members of the AI for Social Good workshop that you're here with us for today. And we have a really exciting special program for you on the impact of AI on art, music, and culture, as well as vice versa, because it is, not a unidirectional relationship there. And so the next hour will be composed of a demonstration. Well, unfortunately, this was meant to be a demonstration of an emotive EEG headset on Yo-Yo Ma's head while he plays music and doing live neuroinformatics. But unfortunately, Olivier, from who's the president of Emotive, had his visa blocked, and he's stuck in Las Vegas for the time being. So we were able to bring a last-minute but very qualified pinch hitter, Douglas Eck, from Google Brain, who is also the founder of Magenta, as well as the Brahms Center at the University of Montreal. You can also look forward to presentations from Karina Kesserwan from Kesserwan Artaud and Valérie Becquet from Element AI. They will each give 10-minute presentations before all four of them engage in a panel discussion at the very end. There will be hopefully some time for questions. And I would just like to give a big shout out and thank you to Element AI, who sponsored this lunch, and the ones that we were able to distribute. I'm afraid we weren't able to feed everyone, but be fed, don't pass out. We don't want to deal with any bodies. So anyway, without further ado, it is my tremendous pleasure to introduce world-renowned cellist and a personal inspiration and hero of mine, Yo-Yo Ma.
No, go. No. Oh, come on. Okay, hey. My goodness. How are you? Good to see you. Valérie, Karina, Douglas. Okay, that's it. Good morning. Do you want to say something?
Good afternoon.
Okay, I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to start doing one thing to start this off. How's that? As you know, I'm sort of like the joke here because this is a show and tell, and they need a token musician to do something. I'm a token in more than one way. Subway token being one. So I'm going to play something for you that, let's say, is written down. It's about 300 years old, and you can get the music, you could do the same thing, and it's pretty much always the same, and I'm going to play it without interpretation, because my friend here, Douglas, is very interested in what does a person interpreting something do to something that's written down. And this may have something to do with what my colleagues Karina and Valérie are going to talk about also in their work. So here's 20 seconds of something. So this is something that you might get if you go to a a $50 synthesizer to say, I'm going to plug this in and I'm going to get these notes. Now, I'm going to add one thing. And it's not actually necessarily a musical thing, but it's just one idea. And I'd like you to tell me what the difference is, and then Douglas will also show us something that we need to figure out. So that one thing is what you all know, because you're humans. You know the feeling of gravity. Right? So you know you can only jump so high. You know that you're pulled down, that you know in another 20 years, like me, you'll be about an inch shorter. That's called long-term gravity. Now, in terms of short-term gravity, how does gravity affect, if I say, plug in gravity into this piece of music that you just heard? Let's see what it sounds like. What's different? Anybody? I went deeper as it, basically I was actually feeling dragged down by whenever I was going towards low. If you go low, I go lower. Anybody else? Yeah. Acceleration. Yes, sometimes the force of gravity is pulling me down faster. Right? Anybody else? Very good. Yep. What? Bass notes. Yep, headed towards bass notes. Great. Douglas.
Yes, this works.
My dear friend.
Yes.
Would you play us something?
If I could hold the cello. No.
Sure.
I was joking. I can do that.
Okay.
Okay, so I wanted there to be a conversation with Yo-Yo, so I'm going to play a piece of AI-generated music. It's always good to follow something like that, slightly intimidating, but I got to type a password here.
He's going to create it right now. Douglas Eck, Mr. Genius.
Okay, so this work was done by a number of people who are not me, including Anna Huang and Ian Simon and Adam Roberts and Jesse Engel. So what you're going to hear is some combination, for those of you that are in the machine learning world, which is most of you, some combination of transformer and wavenet. And it's a piece of music built and performed by a neural network. And I'm hoping to get some feedback from Yo-Yo on how good and or bad it is. And I'm not setting it up to be great. So let's hope the audio works. We did not do a sound check. You are offline, some functionality. Oh, here we go. I think I'm joking. All right. Okay, I'm going to pause it. Can we bring up the sound a little bit? Do we have a sound? You'll bring it up? Okay, I'll start it over. We'll need it to be a little bit louder.
Wonderful.
This is the culmination of my career so far. So I just want to.
So notice, Douglas did it. Look, Ma, no hands. That's amazing. Do you have a, bravo. Now, I would like to ask, Valérie, you used to play cello, and you listened to this piece. What do you think of it? What's your response?
The Doug's piece?
Yeah.
What I think of it? Well, I'm gonna say the same thing that you said to us, like just behind, thinking about the people behind you are behind the cello. Who are the people behind the algorithm? Are they musicians? What kind of data did they use? Are they interprets, like you are? What do you think?
Well, I think definitely you could tell from some of the chord progressions that this person, well, first of all, is a pianist, or whoever is creating the algorithm knows piano playing, is probably a classical pianist, but is interested in jazz.
This is true.
Right?
This is Anna. This is Anna.
And because you could hear that in the progressions, and she's obvious. Now I know it's a she, but it's a person who knows a number of different styles. So I suspect that she knows 12-tone music. She knows Schoenberg. She probably knows some Debussy.
Is Anna out here somewhere? I'm not sure. Because this was announced late. Oh well.
Yeah.
So we'll never know.
But the point is, actually, and where this may have something to do with our discussion, I feel that actually my job, we were asking each other what was the thing that you want to sentence that you would say to describe what you care most about what you do. And I think if I had to describe what I'm always interested in is to figure out who did it and why. In anything. So it's, for me, it's really interesting to hear a piece of music, whether it's, machine learning, deep learning, or a person. Well, I want to know the combination there of who created and why. Was it done to prove something? Was it done for fun? Was it done for just understanding? Or was it done to exploit something? Are you selling a piano? No, I don't think so. Are you trying to, but I would ask those questions. And those, does that make sense to you? Or?
Oh, absolutely. As a manager, the main important thing is to think about the individuals that are behind the code, that are behind the instrument. Mm-hmm. So it makes absolutely sense.
Mm-hmm. And Karina, I asked you what you were thinking about when you were 15, and she said, I was interested in everything. Everything. Philosophy, you have many, many different backgrounds, in cultural backgrounds in your history, and therefore I think your answer to what you care about most is to really make sure that that all voices have equity, essentially. So least heard voices actually also have some form of representation. But so tell me what are the problems that you are dealing with most these days?
The problems I'm dealing. Oh, hello. Yeah, it's working. Okay.
Besides life balance and that kind of stuff.
I think it's interesting that you also said before that you're trying to understand why people do things and what is it on scale between understanding and exploiting. And I think that is something that I do focus a lot my work on. on trying to understand and trying to accompany communities and companies who are trying to understand without going too far on the exploiting side. Because it's important to integrate all the voices, but not to steal the voices, but to amplify the voices.
And Doug, how do you, since you're Mr. Google Brain, right? Yeah.
There's, for some definition of Mr.
Okay. He's a Hugh person brain. So, I mean, how do you do the proportion between your interests of what you were doing with Brahms and other before you went to Google Think, Magenta, whatever, right? Is it called?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, whatever, you know, whatever. So could you tell me so working for a very large entity versus doing research, does your mind change? Does it affect your actions or your thinking? That's funny, isn't it?
I'm trying not to. The jokes in my head are cascading.
Yes.
Seriously, I think, at least for me, I was at University of Montreal for many years and loved it. And I think I've honestly never cared about career success. I've just always been trying to do what I love. Mm-hmm. And at the point in time when I did a dissertation in nonlinear dynamics and musical rhythm, I should have just entitled the dissertation "Career Suicide: because how are you ever going to get a job doing that? I think just it's good to follow your passion, and that's what I've done. And I think that University of Montreal has supported that wonderfully, and to be really fair, Google has supported it wonderfully too, and been able to just kind of keep trying to push the envelope a little bit about what we can do in the space of machine learning and music. Mm-hmm.
Well, I know there's a large part of this conference is thinking a lot about the relationship between, cultural activities and AI, and I know you're very optimistic about what that could bring to the field of the expressive arts in terms of, right? So would you like to comment on, would any one of you like to comment on this?
I think, I called it collisions before, the two worlds colliding, research and art. I think it's important, and it's so wonderful that there's so many people. Mm-hmm. And I hope that they're not here only to hear you, but to hear about AI and art. Let's hope. And so I'm pretty optimistic about that. It's becoming like a tool. The new cello is just there, on the laptop. The new artists, the young artists, mm-hmm. they are starting maybe with code. So what will happen with that? It's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Karina, would you like to either respond or?
So I'm not an artist, and I'm not a scientist, and I don't work in AI. So the perspective from which I come here is wondering if Indigenous voices can help AI and to develop, and what role Indigenous voices can really play. And a lot of the time when people think about Indigenous storytelling, they think about Indigenous storytelling in the past. But Indigenous languages and culture have so much to tell about our future. So how do we make sure that the people who are at Google and who are at Element AI, they are diversified and they bring different perspectives, and they aren't just scientists, but also artists and also linguists and also social workers, so that we can build AI that, as the conference called here, is for social good.
Mm-hmm. Doug?
That's a massive challenge, and one that I think probably everybody in the room can maybe not everybody, but can reflect and realize that we still have a tremendous amount of work to do to move in that direction. Even thinking about the work that we're doing in the space of machine learning and the arts, consider where the data sets are. Consider that how much Western music dominates the data that we train on. Probably once every 18 months, someone comes to talk to me about some form of music from outside of my world. Maybe it's Indian music. And the answer is always shrug shoulders, where's the data? And so, I think if this data is a mirror of ourselves, and machine learning is in some ways providing us this very interesting mirror of our world, we obviously need to take great care to actually pay attention to the whole world.
Can I say something kind of maybe silly to all of you? I used to think that, I used to hope, like maybe 10 years ago, that culture should have a seat at the table of economics and politics. Now, I thought, gee, that's nice. You have a Venn diagram and you have that little spot in the middle where good things can happen. But I've since maybe modified that thinking slightly because I now think that culture actually is the table from which economic and political development can happen. Why? Because I think that everything that we do in this room is invented. We make a difference between, there's art, there's culture, there's AI, there's tech. Actually, we invented all this stuff. And the question is, back to who and why, why did we invent this? I think we invented all of this because these inventions serve to give us a leg up in through understanding in terms of dealing with the world and surviving. So all of this, I think, is designed to help us survive. We talked about service, right, in the phone call a couple days ago. And think about that. Why are we doing all this? And aren't we not actually thinking about, for the first time, mutual survival? So instead of nation building, which we could do very well at various times, we now actually have issues that deal with all of us. So in a way, instead of seeing what we do as a threat, which can be, and we should think about that very much so, but actually, and without trying to be, sort of, rose-colored glasses, we are trying to survive. We are in the Anthropocene era, and we actually need all hands on deck to help. That's my sense from talking to my millennial friends, that these are issues that you care a lot about, and maybe people my old age, you say, well, I'm going to be dead in 20 years, so who cares? But my grandson's going to be 82 years old in the year 2100. So even for an old guy like me, I have to think about these things. Do you worry? I mean, are these things that? Raise your hands if you think I'm crazy. Okay, just checking to see whether you're listening. Raise your hands if you think that you are actually trying to work in such a way that will help us survive. That's pretty optimistic. That's pretty good. So okay, conference closed. I think we're done.
Given the topic of the day in this room, there is a selection bias. But you need to ask the people who didn't come to this particular track.
So talk to your friends.
Right. I actually have a different question. How many people consider themselves at some level an artist or a musician? Yeah.
Nice.
That's what I love to see. I mean, the idea that we're trying to, that we I always get it backwards. We live to work. No, we work to live, right? Our lives are very rich, and there's a lot going on day to day that's not about the workplace. And the idea that we can be moving forward using technology to try some new things out, and all these hands go up.
That's great. And so how many of you think it's silly to make these distinctions between sort of arts and sciences? That's interesting. Because there used to be more of a connection, and maybe there will be more in the future. Yeah. Right? Let me try something else on you guys. Do you mind if I want to... No. So because...
Does anybody mind?
I just have a couple of things that I want to try. One of them is, we tried the gravity experiment, right? Let's take this one step further. And I'm going to play you some, it's like a slow dance that goes to the second beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And this is to indicate when you hear something like, this kind of a dissonance, and then that is not a dissonance. I want to have you guys listen 3 beats to the second beat and how it relates. 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay, so this is something that I think the pianist that worked with the AI understands the kind of very subtle timing that is incredibly, makes things vulnerable, humanistic, and meaningful, right? So if you listen once again, there are lines that go down, and there are lines that go up. So the line that goes down has the dissonant note on the second beat. The lines that go up don't. So let's hear once more. So this is something very, very simple, which you could say, deep AI, deep learning, maybe one day can create. And I wish it could. But what I also wish is that the understanding and the meaning comes from feelings, right? The feeling of gravity, the feelings of dissonance and resolution, the feelings of being weighted down, the feelings of aspirational moving upwards in direction with less conflict. And because those are things that we all go through on a daily basis in all of what we do, in our work and in our love. So it's another way of interpreting information. You inject the humanity of who we are into what this beautiful piece of music that you actually had us listen to. So it's totally possible, but I think that one of you know, there was a book that came out a number of years ago called Descartes' Error, right? Because we are, and you know that if we are all about reasoning, we would either be in much better shape or much worse shape, right? And obviously, we don't always do what's in our best interest, except in Canada.
Okay, so 2 or 3 things came up from what you said. The first comment I hope is interesting to the machine learning practitioners in the room, which is, so when Yo-Yo said the person who coded up this machine learning algorithm, she was a classical pianist, et cetera, it's actually true. And my initial reaction to that was, well, this guy doesn't understand what we do, because, you know, who cares if she's a classical pianist or not? This is machine learning, it's math. But in fact, that's not the case at all, right? Like the prior knowledge that we bring to the table when you're sweating and you're working every day and you're trying something new, the kinds of intuitions that come to the table, they really influence the work. And I love it that you got that right away. And you know, that's really my one bit of feedback. I want to pass the microphone to one of you two if you have other.
And when we talked about that, I asked because you know you have to make decisions while you're doing your algorithms. You have to, and those decisions, they come from where? They come from your emotions. They come from what you know. They come from your understanding. So it's wonderful that we have this opportunity to, you know, to take a step back as practitioners, and because life is crazy and we're working hard on making things work. There's a deadline, we have to finish that paper, this code is supposed to work. Okay, but what does it mean? Why do I do that? How do am I expressing myself to all that? It's funny because you said a great portion of what we do and why maybe we're doing bad things in the world is true emotion. It's not only reason. For me, it's like it's evident since again I'm managing people, I know that it's not logic, even for researchers, that, you know, emotion is a big part of who we are, how we work. So of course, this is a huge chunk of the code that is in there.
It's interesting that all the comments about that music that you presented are about the person who programmed the AI and not the AI itself. And here's where I want to bring an example from indigenous perspectives. So in indigenous languages, a lot of them, not all of them, obviously there's many languages, there's 11 nations just in Quebec, but some languages like the Innu and the Cree, so they have 2 genders. And for example, in French, we have feminine and masculine. So for example, a tree would be un arbre, masculine, and the table would be une table, feminine. But the 2 genders in Innu, for example, are something that's animate, so the tree is animate, has a soul, and the table is inanimate, and it doesn't have a soul. And so the question that I ask my Innu friends is, well, what about AI? Is AI animate or is it inanimate? And I got some very different answers to that. So for example, some of my friends said, well, it depends if you interact with it. So once you interact, for example, with your Alexa, she becomes animate, while if you just carry the physical thing around, it's inanimate. And this question is also explored by indigenous science fiction writers, such as Drew Hayden Taylor, that you might know, that wrote a book called Take Me to Your Chief, about about robots in general, and has one story about artificial intelligence that is coming alive, and the artificial intelligence itself asks itself, what's my religion? And then it goes to different religion and says, I can't be Christian or Buddhist because they don't think I exist and they don't think I have a soul. And so I want to be indigenous because indigenous people think I have a soul. And then it becomes really feeling close. And that's the question, can it feel? Can artificial intelligence feel? And I think a lot of you might say no, but isn't that the reason we used for so many things we thought were inferior to us, by saying it cannot feel? And so in this short story, the artificial intelligence feels so bad about what we did to indigenous people that it doesn't want to exist in this world, and it destroys itself. And I think those reflections are really important in how, when we build AI.
Wow. That's great. That's probably a good place to end, I think. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, it would.
No? That's amazing. Douglas?
Yeah.
I want to leave time for you if you're going to pick up your cello again and give us another example.
Well,
I don't want to be the person that made that not
no,
happen.
come on. No.
It's not me applauding, it's them applauding.
No, they want you.
No, they don't, I promise you.
Everybody told me in secret. I'm coming for Douglas. So maybe the last thing I want to show is that based on what you just said, that I think sometimes one thing that appears in one culture to mean one thing may mean something very different in another culture. So for example, you take this. Yadadam, badadam, badadam. In the Soviet Union, in Shostakovich's language, that was about the military, right? And so that's consistent in all of his music. In Bach's music, it's a joy theme. So I'm going to end with that's AI. Yeah? Time for questions?
So I think we have just over 10 minutes left. I believe we have just over 10 minutes, and this might be a good opportunity either for Valerie or for Karina to share some of the work that you're doing through Element AI to bring together arts, AI, etc., as well as Karina's work representing the Indigenous and Aboriginal communities.
Yeah, very quickly, and everything is on our Facebook page, so go there. Importantly, we have a residency for artists. There's a call for candidacy. It ends in January, so what we want to bring an artist in the Milex Center with all the researchers there to enlighten the researchers with the presence of an artist and use this as a way to start conversation. So go see on our Facebook page, there's a workshop, there's art gallery using generative design and all that. I think we need time for your work also, so thank you.
Thank you. I had a few images. I don't know if I can. Should I go? Yeah. Yeah, I can get there. Okay. Just very quickly, because I already shared some with you. So as I was telling you, it's the importance for me to connect different systems of knowledge between communities and industry and academia. And I think it's important to remember how important indigenous perspectives are in artificial intelligence. One example I have of indigenous languages being pertinent to technology is this word Inuktitut, that's Iktuarpuk. And what this word means is this feeling of anticipation that leads you to keep looking outside to see if anyone is coming. And I think that's how we feel about our cell phones, when we keep checking them. Another indigenous concept are the wampum belts. So you might know about wampum belts. So wampum belts use only two variables, white beads and purple beads, to tell a very complex story and record a lot of information. Reminds you of something? Binary. And some people even credit wampums for the invention of hypertext. So Google it if you're interested. I told you about the difference between animate and inanimate objects in the indigenous languages, and I already told you also about Drew Hayden-Taylor and his novel, and there are also other indigenous novelists. This one is from Australia, Ambeline Kwamaluma, and she's also saying that it doesn't matter if AI is human or not human, because in indigenous systems, you can respect something that's not human, such as the sun and the stars and the wind. And finally, we touched on the concept of thinking in the future. And one of the important Iroquois concepts is thinking 7 generations ahead. So about 140 years. But in terms of technology, what does AI 7.0 looks like? What is it 7 generations from now? So that's when we're thinking about the values and what we're constructing. We shouldn't just think now, but really in the future. So that's something I want to share with you. Thank you. Oops.
Wow.
All right. I think we've got time for at least a few questions. So if you are stuck in the middle of an island, raise your hand. Otherwise, anyone who can make their way to a mic, starting with that gentleman over there.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. So I think the biggest problem that I can see is that we have a culture which focuses so much on greed, competition, and not on harmony, mutual support. And so, it's one thing to work towards survival. It's one thing to work towards personal productivity or group productivity. It's even another thing to work towards particular applications that help people get through tough situations. But there's this fundamental substrate that we all live in, which one person told me from a different country. He said, in America, you're like a bacterial culture, whereas my culture, we're like a connective tissue. Where you're all cells and you're all trying to survive. But in America, the fundamental, in the bacterial culture case, the relationship fundamentally is competition, where in his culture he thought it's the opposite. And so if that's just the baseline, how do we change that? Because I feel that would be the thing that leads everything else to succeed with technology or anything else. So how do we change our culture to be this just collaborative one?
I think aren't you doing your part?
I'm really interested in knowing your answer.
Oh, come on. One of the things when you don't have a steady job is that I have to travel for a living. And one of the things that I've been doing lately is to go into a lot of smaller communities. And wherever I go, I find people that are not in the news that are actually helping one another. And it's astonishing, the numbers of people, actually in inner cities, in rural areas, small and mid-sized cities, people are actually forming communities all the time. We just don't always read about them. They don't get the voices that others have. They don't have the same kind of platform. But if you guys can help identify these folk and join them together so they don't feel isolated and they don't feel like their voices are not heard, it becomes an unbelievably powerful a group of people that could move agendas. And that, that's my hope for everybody. But I do see anecdotally lots of evidence for that. And it's not, okay, in the States, yes, corporate culture is a certain way, but actually in society, very often you have different, you have people acting differently.
Can I follow up on that?
Please.
That I'm also really hopeful about the micro, sort of the local communities helping each other out. For the first time in my life, and I'm almost 50, I'm genuinely concerned about our democracy and our free press. And I think it's not just in the United States, and I think we need to be thinking about ways to protect our core institutions and make sure that they remain stable and fair and continue to build the kind of almost like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like there's so much basic work that we need to do to make society better. And only if we do that and achieve that are we really going to make any difference with AI and machine learning.
Thank you
I'm
very
going to
much.
jump in here for a moment. We've got a question from the front row.
Hi. First, thanks for the wonderful music and comments. So my question is about, the panel is about creativity, at least part of it, I think. With AI creating more and more art, music and other art that, at least for some people, is becoming closer and closer to what they would expect to see from artists. What's your view on what is the implication on how we think about creativity? And does it have an impact on that? And how should we think about it?
I mean, for me, a lot of what I think is art that I want to go back to over and over again are works of art that actually make me think about things and actually have a more concise, clearer, deeper understanding of human nature than I do, or a broader understanding, or of nature. So I don't think of scientists as not artists. I think people who are probing the unknown, I think are a version of artists, and they want to try and build something that they can bring back that other people can build from. So again, I don't want to make that distinction of, well, AI can do this. There are people behind AI.
Right.
I mean, just saying, you know? And
You know, the other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, art is so reliant upon a deep understanding of culture, our culture. And so, you know, out of whatever, Andy Warhol, in some very real way, wouldn't be art if you transported it to 13th century England, right? So the fact that you can just generate, I argue, that the fact that you just generate is not enough. And so, you know, maybe someday we'll have AI technology that is embedded in our culture and understands us and has political opinions, et cetera. But I mean, I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetimes, Yossi. You know, I think we're a little. I'm not trying to hurry things along or anything like that, but you know, I think we've got a lot of.
We'll have more conversations on that.
Okay.
yeah,
Did you have
So-
anything to add? It's a fascinating question.
yeah.
Well, my personal position around that is really, for me, art is a way for human to express something and another human to receive that expression. So, of course, it needs an understanding of the human nature. And the only thing that I'm worried about is that because things are getting so easy, we have access to easy things, we can generate things easily, that we don't take the time to just come to ourselves and understand who we are, ask questions about our human nature, and we just enjoy things that are pleasing, and that's all. So that's the only thing that I'm worried about.
You know, one of the things that I love about Montreal is that I think people here, and this is not exclusive to Montreal. It's that people everywhere have that same trait. But I think they keep a sense of the non-measurables intact. So in other words, the inner life is important. I look at you as a human being. I don't look at you as what you do. What can you do for me? What kind of transaction can I have with you? No, the people actually can talk without a specific agenda and enjoy each other. That's something I think is so precious. We need that. If we don't have that as a toddler, we won't survive. You know, experiments have proven that. So there's certain things that we need as human beings and that need to bring us into life and to bring us out of life. And those things, until we actually evolve into something else, are going to stay with us. And we need to deal with it over and over and over again.
So the time is currently just past 1. I have received a green light and a bit of permission to go a bit over. So what I might propose that we do is have the next 3 people just do a rapid fire set of questions. Please keep it to like 1 or 2 sentences and not run-on sentences.
All right. Sentence 1, it's called joie de vivre, what you described in Montreal. Sentence 2, I'm not a fan of survival of the fittest. I think, when I think about art, I think about beauty, about and quality of life. I think we're going beyond survival. We're actually, you know, why are we living? And what Valérie was mentioning, like connecting with people, that's you know, what bring joy to life and this kind of thing. So I would like just to hear your thoughts about this philosophical direction of going survival. I think is too American competition and we need to survive. No, I mean, we need to live.
17, 18 sentences. Okay. Okay, next one. So 1 is survival. Number 2?
Hi, my question is, I guess, is a little bit more philosophical. I guess as a musician, Yo-Ma, do you often make music or play music that appeals to as most people as you can, or do you do multiple different style of music that appeals to different groups of people? And I wonder if you see AI to be doing the same. That is there such a universal value that UI should strive through, or should it be many different kinds of values? Sorry, I know it's a mouthful, but
Okay.
hopefully.
Cool. So survival, generalization versus specification, and then finally?
So
Nice.
at this lunch, I think I've heard a lot about like equating these machines to be more human-like, to be able to generate art. But to me, I think like there's no difference between a toaster and the AI that we're developing in terms that it's just a machine that's like deterministically producing an output based on the stuff that's already there, right? So do you think there's this quest to humanize these machines so that like we just won't have to accept that we are just machines? Thank you.
You want to start?
Does life imitate art, or does art imitate technology, or does technology imitate? I don't know. Good luck.
Well, for Simone's comment about not being a fan of survival of the fittest, luckily, survival of the fittest is a fan of you, so to speak, because you're alive in this room. And so that's a plus. But I agree that building on top of that is this idea that we should work to live and not vice versa. Joie de vivre.
I think we're one giant experiment. There's, you know, this is what we make of what we have, of what we are, and the results will be the results of our common endeavors. In many ways, the more power we have, the more we deserve what we get, right? Because a lot of people are unfortunate in not having access, and you're working hard to make that possible. But if we do have access, then we actually, we're more than teenagers. We have to actually then construct our living styles, and in a way that is most conducive to our surroundings. And the more we know, in a way, sadly, the more responsibility we have. And I think, I worry that our speed of acquiring knowledge outpaces our ability to absorb and to integrate it into our lives. And I think if AI can help in that way, and to actually help us see the largest, so one principle in art, in storytelling, is that you have to actually have two things happening in your mind at the same time. The universal and the most specific. So the biggest story as well as the most immediate moment. And I think that's true with the deeper you go into something, the more you find the universal. So it's not about AI or art, it's about how deeply you go into, because you go so deeply into AI, you get into philosophy, you get into spirituality, you get into asking the why questions, right? And if I'm a technician, I'll just deliver something to you. But if I want to say something more, I'll have to actually dig deeper. So to your question of what to play, it's really, who are you sharing it with? You don't offer a meal of anything to a guest that's coming to your house. You try and figure out who's coming to your house. So if I'm playing a piece of music to you, you're in my house. So you're my guest, so I have to care about you, and you're not a stranger. We're already establishing a relationship. And in culture, it's not a business plan. In culture, you make a relationship, you never break it. Because if you break it, it's not real. So that's a great responsibility. It's like a parent, You don't say, well, today you're not my child, because I don't like you.
Anything to add?
Well, maybe add something about the question about survival. I think once again, it's how do we find survival? Is it survival of the fittest? Or is it survival of everyone together? And what does it mean to be alive? Is it about spiritual survival and survival of those parts of us that are not only functioning in this physical world? So I think it goes back into this interaction with AI, teaching us about ourselves and thinking about what does it mean to be human and what does it mean to be alive?
I'm gonna just add something on that note, because what I find fascinating is the question that the artistic world brings to the AI community are exactly that. Okay, they are seeing the AI trying to imitate what they do, and now they're asking, okay, who are we? And it's wonderful. So thanks a lot.
Okay, I think I'll just end with one thing, which is that I think I still don't know the answer of what makes us human. I think that's the question we have to ask, because I'm not sure we understand ourselves yet. And just think in the last couple years, the gut and the brain, the two brains. So suddenly, are we in control of our will? Because my stomach tells me I want to eat something, and before I even know it, right? I mean, this is one thing. We've just discovered another organ between our skin that is actually, that we have not discovered, because usually when we cut through, we don't see. There's so many things we don't know about us. And in the field of neuroscience, we are really discovering many, many things. So of which AI becomes one part of what humans do. So until we understand who we are, it's very hard to be in control. So that comes back to all of the basic questions that actually will remain unanswered, but we have to be able to live with that.
That seems like a good ending point.
Live with that?
Yeah.
Live with that! Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I certainly couldn't think of a better ending, the big question of AI being what makes us human. And I wish we could continue talking here, but Yo-Yo has 2 more stops. This is the first of 3 during his day of action here in Montreal. He'll, after having performed the 6-box cello suite pieces last night in what I heard was a fantastic performance, at 2 p.m. he'll be in the Metro playing the Globe of Human Resonance and Music and Machines is the name of the thing. And then at 4 p.m., Indigenous Futures in Media over at Whitewall Studio, excuse me. So we've got to head out. But again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. And can we please give another round of applause to everyone who joined us here today.
Thank you so much.